All right, we may just be a week away from a government shutdown. Now, the congressional resolution funding the government expires at 11:59 p.m. next Friday. Now, we are counting down to that moment, and every night you'll be able to see just how much time is left. Now, a shutdown is a prospect that lawmakers are beginning to take very seriously, and that includes Democrats and senators like Chuck Schumer of New York. Now, today, he arrived early to a call with some of his fellow Democratic senators, and he was not aware that reporters were already on the line. Now, you can listen as he lectures his colleagues on how to demonize the Tea Party and House Speaker John Boehner.
The main thrust is basically that we want to negotiate and we want to come up with a compromise, but the Tea Party is pulling Boehner too far over to the right, and so far over that there's no more fruitful negotiations. And the subtext of this is the only way we can avoid a shutdown is for Boehner to come up with a reasonable compromise and not just listen to what the Tea Party wants, because the Tea Party wants to stick to H.R. 1 with its draconian extreme. I always use the word extreme. That's what the caucus instructed me to do the other week. Extreme cuts and all these riders. And Boehner's in a box.
Now, I'd say that's just the sort of class that we've come to expect from the Democrats. Joining me now with a reaction, and you guys are both nodding your heads here, from the Fox Business Network, the host of Varney & Company, Stuart Varney, and former White House press secretary, Fox News contributor Dana Perino. Well, first of all this is a $3.7 trillion budget, $1.65 trillion deficit this year alone. The Democrats, they're willing to offer only $20 billion in cuts as to the negotiations. $20 billion, $1.6 trillion deficit, and his MO is to demonize.
Far be it from me to be extreme and strong, but that was a disgrace. To be playing politics, to be trying to shove the blame onto the other side at a time like this, when America truly faces a financial crisis with a deficit like this. It is a financial crisis. To play politics like that is an absolute disgrace. But that is gambling with America's security, gambling with America's financial future.
Not even gambling. I mean, all this is about power. They want all of these deficits, all of this money, because they get the power. And yet they're calling John Boehner and the Tea Party extreme?
What's interesting to me about that phone call is that, so Senator Schumer says, I was instructed by the conference to say this, and so therefore I'm saying it. When they realized that reporters were on the phone, they quickly shut up. The more interesting soundbite to me was that right immediately on the heels of Senator Schumer saying what she ought to say, Senator Boxer then repeats it.
Yeah, she goes.
So that's the statement that they have out there. Well, there's something that is a little bit even worse, I think, than look, having a messaging meeting and having it be overheard, not ideal. But the Democrats have also been saying that Speaker Boehner has, behind closed doors and behind the backs of Republicans, agreed to cut in half what the Republican House passed, which was a $61 billion cut. His office says that is categorically not true. There has been no agreement behind closed doors, and they passed that budget 40 days ago today. And to this date, the Senate Democrats are the ones who run the Senate. If there is a government shutdown, it is their fault.
This is not, frankly, $61 billion is peanuts.
I know.
Nothing.
And Democrats, they say they might be willing to offer $20 billion in cuts more. It's peanuts.
It is ridiculous. This is the Democrats, and this is the White House crisis. This is their stimulus plan, their two record spending budgets, their massive spending, which has created this crisis, created this spending crisis. Forget the Republicans. Concentrate on the Democrats. This is their crisis. What are they going to do about it?
Forget that. Well, this is the key, because forget about this is last year's budget, when they had both houses in the White House. Here's the thing. If I think Mike Pence is right, it's time for a fight. So should the Republicans be willing to stand strong and firm as they promised the American people? And if the Democrats shut down the government, should they go along?
For the good of the country, yes. Sorry, Dad.
Well, don't hold back. Tell us how you really feel. No. Maybe. But I also know that the reason that they are there is to get something done. This is only for last year's budget that the Democrats couldn't pass, even when they ran the tables. So there might be a point where we need to agree to something.
How about this? I have an idea. Dick Morrison talked about some aspect of this as well. How about they defund all foreign aid? All of
I'm not for that.
Wait a minute, except for Israel. I'd make an exemption.
I'm not for that.
Because of the position they're in. All foreign aid, and up until they come up with a responsible budgeting deal, it's off the table. Then they'll let the Democrats, will fund the military, will fund Social Security, will fund all necessary operations of government.
I think we're fooling around on the edge of a crisis. I think we're so far gone. We're so close to the point where we drop over that cliff. It's time to forget political positioning here. It's time to get down to the business of fixing America's finances.
That's what I'm saying.
Now, wait a second. Just a couple of days ago, America, Uncle Sam, tried to borrow money, okay? They ran into some headway. Lenders were reluctant to lend. That's the first signal that we have a crisis and that it is approaching. Now, we've got to do something. Forget this political positioning, this $4 billion or $11 billion or not foreign aid. Forget that. You've got to really get to grips with this.
I agree.
And if it means shutting down the government and getting to grips with it,
but that,
in the interest of the country, that's what you've got to do.
And that's
here's
only
the headline,
for that
though.
one.
Democrats prepare to profit from shutdown.
Yes.
Right. But not only that, next week, when the House Republicans, or the week after that, when Congressman Ryan introduces the budget, the thing that the Democrats are going to do, forget this thing about calling them extreme on this budget. They're going to go after them because Republicans are going to have the guts to talk about entitlement reform that would protect those who are near or in retirement, but they're still going to be demonized
I agree
anyway.
with you. You see, but the Democrat strategy has always been Republicans want old people to die, and if they live, they can only eat dog or cat food. And it's going to get worse. What Chuck Schumer revealed here is going to be the strategy now up till the November 2012 election.
Demonize.
That's it.
Portray as extreme.
See, you want us to be reasonable. The Democrats, that is not reasonable. You can't have a reasonable discussion when somebody only wants to cut $20 billion when you have a $1.65 trillion.
Focus on the president. This is the president. This is the Democrats' crisis. They should be leading us out of it, not playing politics, not gambling with America.
I think that the White House will actually undercut some of the Senate Democrats and try to come closer to John Boehner. I think that Boehner actually wins this in the end. I do think on foreign aid, it's still not enough, even if you were to do that. It's not enough to make a dent. And I don't think it'll actually move the Democrats anyway.
All right, guys, when we come back, we're going to ask Florida's freshman senator, Marco Rubio, is here in this first live national TV interview since his election in November. Plus, with the first GOP primary debates just around the corner, one of the party's most promising potential candidates, former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty. He's here tonight as well as we continue this edition of Hannity. And tonight, it is a Hannity exclusive. He is a Tea Party favorite, a rising GOP star who has somehow managed to keep a lower profile since his much-talked-about election to the U.S. Senate last November. Not that Marco Rubio has not been busy. He's just been focusing on issues important to his home state, the Sunshine State, Florida. Now, the second youngest U.S. senator is opening up about what he says is the greatest challenge facing our generation today. And joining me now for his first live national TV interview since being elected, the man himself, Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Senator, welcome back. It's such a pleasure to have you back. Thank you.
I'm glad to be back.
All right, so I interviewed you on the radio a while ago, and I predicted that one day you'll be president. And the response was overwhelming. And meaning from the audience, they really would like to see that, but you're saying not this time around.
Well, first of all, I'm very flattered by that and by their response. The reality, though, is I have a pretty important job right now. You know, being in the United States Senate's an important job, and it needs to be done well, and that's what I'm focused on, and because that's what I ran for. I mean, I ran because I wanted to have this opportunity to kind of get involved in some of these issues that we're facing, that you've been talking about tonight and for weeks, and that I hope we'll get to talk about a little bit tonight. So.
We're going to talk about it at length, but you would not rule out if a candidate would not rule out if somebody said, you're not going to run, but if somebody said, Senator Rubio, would you consider running with me? You will not rule that out.
As vice president, no, I'm not going to be the vice presidential nominee. I'm focused on this, and it's important that I have that attitude too, because otherwise I won't be able to do this job well. You know, I really believe, and I've learned this in time from being involved before, that if you're focused on anything other than your job, you're not going to do your job well. And the job I have is an important one. This United States Senate job is, Florida deserves to have a full-time senator, and that's what I want to be.
Senator, I was very impressed when you wrote a piece. It's called "It's Not Too Late to Save America." You said you would not go along with any more continuing resolutions. America borrows $4 billion a day. We have a $14 trillion debt. Explain.
Well, it's not difficult to understand. This is the greatest country that's ever existed. It was built through hard work, some difficult choices that the people that were here before us made. And as great as the last 100 years were for America, the next 100 years could truly be better. You know, the American people haven't forgotten how to create jobs. The people of our country are the same people that built this extraordinary nation. The only thing standing in their way are government policies. Government policies like runaway regulations and unpredictable and high taxes that discourage job creation. You know, these regulatory agencies that are tormenting job creators across America. And a government that spends more money than it takes in, continually spends money that it doesn't have, borrowing $4 billion a day, half of it from foreigners, most of that from the Chinese. We cannot continue on this road. And we are, yes, we can continue to be the greatest country in the history of the world, but there are some things we have to deal with, and we are running out of time to deal with them.
You said that America now is at risk, that our children will inherit a country for the first time worse off than the one their parents were given. And you say you will not vote to increase the debt limit unless certain things happen. What are they?
Well, first of all, it's got to be the last time we ever do it. Number two, there has to be meaningful tax reform. Number three, there has to be meaningful regulatory reform. We can't continue to allow these regulatory agencies to torment job creators. Number four, we need a balanced budget amendment. Number five, we need spending caps. Number six, we need to use the debt limit itself as a way to ensure that America's debt limit begins to decline, not always go up. How about the debt limit starting to go down? These are the kinds of things that I hope we'll focus on. Now, here's what the critics are going to say. Well, we don't have enough time to do all of that. That's not true. These ideas have been around here for a long time. Everybody here knows exactly what needs to be done. The problem is they don't want to do it. They want to either use it to win their next election. I think you talked about it in your earlier segment. They want to use all this debt stuff as a political tool to win elections. They're more interested in winning their next campaign, even if it means losing the essence of their country. And I think that's shameful.
What do you make? Is there really the will? What have you learned in the short time now that you've been in Washington? You've got this good old boy network. Harry Reid says, no way, I'm not going to support Social Security reform. Democrats still have a majority in the body in which you work. So what have you learned in the short time you've been there, and how do you break that institutional hold they have?
Well, let's remind everybody that the reason why we're still talking about the 2011 budget is because the folks who ran this place, House, Senate, and White House, the Democratic Party, didn't pass a budget last year. That's why we're still talking about 2011. And in fact, the Senate Democrats still haven't passed a budget, even to this very moment. They still haven't dealt with it. But I think there are really three camps. There's a group of people that really want to make a difference. There's a group of people that want to make a difference but are afraid to step out because it'll be used against them. There's a third group of people that are hoping that we step out so they can use it against us or try to use it against us. You just talked about Social Security and Medicare. I want those programs to survive. My mom is on Social Security and Medicare. I want these programs to exist when I retire. I don't want to see any changes for current beneficiaries. But if we don't do anything, these programs aren't even going to exist before long, and they're going to begin to see benefit reductions because they start running out of money. We have to save these programs by reforming these programs, and the reform should not be on the shoulders of current beneficiaries or retirees. It should be on people in my generation, decades away from retirement. It's up to us to deal with this in our lifetime.
You are really drawing a line in the sand with these stands that you're taking here. So obviously, when you make such a strong commitment, you've got to stand by it, or people will say, well, you didn't have the courage of your convictions. Where did these values come from? Because I got to know you a little bit during your campaign, and I was very impressed with your background and your story, your family background. Where did this, because you're so passionate about it, where did these values come from in your life?
Well, I mean, they really comes from my upbringing, and just a small story I've shared with people over the last week, a small story about my upbringing. My dad passed away in September, but my mom in particular, I've been able to talk to her recently a lot about this country, what it meant when they came here. And I asked her, what was the thing that struck you the most? And one thing she told me is it was the first time in her life that she had ever met anyone who owned something or ran something that they didn't inherit. Where she came from in Cuba, almost everybody who owned land or owned a business, that was what their parents had and left for them. This was the first time that she actually met people that told her, oh no, you know, we started from nothing, but we worked hard and were able to accomplish this. And for the first time, she actually felt, and so did my dad, that they would have a chance to fulfill their dreams, and more importantly, that their kids would. That's unique about America. That's the product of the difficult decisions that the people who were here before us made. I'm afraid we're going to lose that if we continue on the road we're on right now. I'm not afraid we're going to lose that. I know that we will. That doesn't have to happen. There is an alternative here, but we have to get to work on it now.
Do you fear if Barack Obama would be reelected that we would continue down that wrong road? The title of your article was, "It's not too late to save America," if he got a second term? Would it be too late?
Yeah, if we continue with the policies that this president and the leadership in the Senate here have pursued over the last couple of years, if we continue on the road we're on right now, this country will be a very different place 4 years from now.
All right, Senator Rubio, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And coming up, it's the most shocking footage of the Japanese tsunami yet. You won't believe what else was caught on this tape. Plus, he's one of the first major GOP presidential hopefuls to throw his hat into the ring for 2012. Former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty, he's here next, and much more straight ahead.